Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we'll be discussing unified Microsoft Agile and PPM solutions with Project Online and Azure DevOps. My name is Doug Welsby, and I'm the channel manager here at Microsoft. I'm also joined by my colleagues Jim Patterson, our Director of Sales, and Matt Willey, our OnePlan product specialist. During today's webinar, attendees will be on mute and the line will not be open for questions. However, feel free to use the GoToWebinar question feature to submit questions. I will address these questions during the webinar and will respond via email if we do not get to your specific question. If for some reason you get distracted or pulled away from the webinar, no need to worry, as I will be emailing a link to the presentation once it's been posted to our YouTube channel. I'll now turn the presentation over to Jim, who will be handling the webinar. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate the introduction. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for spending some time with us today for this topic, Unified Microsoft Agile and PPM Solution using Project Online and Azure DevOps. Today, we're going to cover, over the course of the presentation and the demonstration, the following topics, just some aspects of the Agile landscape and marketplace today. We're going to talk about the combinations of a hybrid waterfall and Agile world and the use cases around that. And we'll talk about some integration and hybrid solutions that are available today to help make those things work for you seamlessly within your organizations. We're going to try to spend the bulk of the time on a demonstration of how those things are live and available today and are not just theory. They're things that you can put into practice very quickly within your organizations. And at the end, we'll have a summary and wrap up and some next steps and some special offers for those of you that have registered and attended. So with that, let's get started. So let's talk about Agile today. You know, what is primarily driving the increase in the use of Agile today is this age of digital transformation. Companies that were formerly brick and mortar type of companies have essentially been evolved or even supplanted in some cases by more digital approaches to the marketplace. In that mode, organizations have to find new and better ways to go to market, address their customers' needs, and support them long term. The examples we have here are many. I mean, one that's probably primary is Blockbuster, who used to have 60,000 employees in over 9,000 locations. And given changes of user sentiments and needs, the streaming world essentially took over. And things like Netflix and other comparable solutions have now supplanted the Blockbusters of the world. But it even goes down to the things that we do every day, like going into fast food restaurants and ordering our soft drinks through a computerized, more digital type of approach and getting that and getting what we want. The idea is that more and more of our projects are becoming software or technology driven. And it impacts all parts of the organization, whether it be the executives that have to innovate and come up strategically with new go-to-markets and new offerings and new ways to monetize those offerings. The PMOs who have to manage an increasingly diverse amount of project types within their organizations. The ever-increasing demands on software development and application development organizations to put out things quickly and frequently and in great volume. And then ultimately, there's a part of the organization that has to support what's been developed. So every part of the organization tends to be impacted in this world. The thing that it also changes is that it is not a steady as she goes type of project management world as it was years and years ago, where you built a plan, you phased it, it could have been a multi-year effort, and you kind of went along and followed the plan. Today, the pace of change is accelerated to the point where oftentimes by the time the project is over, the needs of the customer or the requirements have changed dramatically. And the idea we have to be able to respond and address that pace of change so that when we deliver things, it's actually meeting the needs and wants of our customer base. To that end, the rise of Agile is real. CollabNet version 1 does an Agile State of Agile survey every year. And the 12th annual one said that 97% of organizations surveyed practice Agile somewhere in their organizations. It doesn't mean a wholesale adoption of Agile in all aspects, but 97% that's using some form of Agile somewhere in their organization is a pretty stout number. And it's increasing steadily over the years from just 2011, where it was at 80%, and it keeps rising on an annual basis. Pretty interesting type of metric to look at to validate the things that we're seeing and hearing from our customers when we talk to them on a day-to-day basis. But full Agile adoption across aspects of an organization is not what we're seeing. We're seeing that many organizations doing a little bit of Agile where it's appropriate to do so, things like software development and new product development. But the Project Management Institute, in a publication called Capturing the Value of Project Management Through Organizational Agility, said that smart organizations realize that using Agile techniques such as Scrum or DevOps are not the only or even the best indicator of an organization's speed or flexibility. Most organizations are likely to use several different approaches. And the more popular one shown here is Agile, iterative, lean approaches, the traditional waterfall, or even extreme program are some of the things that people are using, and trying to use the right method for the right type of work and the right type of project and the people that are actually going to be working on those projects. And Gartner, as they do their analysis of the marketplace and look at their hype cycle for project and portfolio management in 2018, you can see that Agile project management in general has gotten over that peak of inflated expectations that's there. But what's still on the rise on the innovation side of things is things like adaptive enterprise Agile. Adaptive program management, which is another word for hybrid, where there's mixed modes or mixed methodologies that are being used, and more enterprise Agile frameworks. And that's still on the rise and still early in its life cycle and its maturity. And a lot of organizations are trying to find ways to scale their use of Agile. Agile, tends to bubble up from the team level, where certain teams adopt an Agile approach for the things that they're doing. And then as it takes a broader hold across an organization, then there's the needs to try and scale it to a full enterprise model. SAFe is one of multiple frameworks for enterprise Agile that people are using, but it seems to be one of the most common, the most popular ones. But as you can see, there's a lot of aspects to that to actually have an enterprise Agile PPM type of approach in its entirety. And some folks maybe take or cherry pick the things that are important to them as they go through in this evolution. The reason is SAFe requires a commitment and major organizational change if you're going to do it from top to bottom within an organization. And many organizations either can't do that quickly or don't have the desire or the goal to do that wholesale across an organization. So it is a major undertaking. Getting into a full lean enterprise for Agile, which is another framework, is a long-term initiative, and it's a journey, and it's not something that you get to by flipping a switch. So what's really important is to understand where you are in the Agile PPM spectrum. Probably most of us who have been doing this for a long time, look at on the far right, where traditional PPM and using more waterfall types of approaches was the way of the day, and using more top-down governance type of portfolio management in our PMOs. And then on the left side, we've got that full Agile PPM where we've had an Agile transformation and we have a mindset and an approach across an organization, from executive suite all the way down through middle management, all the way down through the teams that actually develop and deliver on these projects. That tends to be a minority, what we find of the case of people that are out there in the marketplace doing that full wholesale adoption of Agile in all aspects of what they're doing. We find the vast majority of people that we talk to are in the middle. They're in this hybrid PPM world where they have a mix of both Agile and waterfall types of projects. And the reason that they're there may vary. It could be that they're on a Agile transformation and their goal is to get to the left over here with a full Agile transformation. And there's going to be a transformative period that can be years in between that they have to be able to accommodate both methodologies. And then there's folks that recognize for themselves that there will always be a blend of different types of projects, whether it be Agile or waterfall or other combinations thereof. And the idea is that they're in that hybrid world as well, but they're just there for different reasons. So the thing is, we have to understand where we are in that and what our goals are as we decide what approach we're going to take. So if we look at the hybrid waterfall and Agile use cases, which is our focus today, the reality in the marketplace today is that with the proliferation of tools that are out there in the marketplace and largely getting more voluminous because of the cloud offerings that are out there, we end up in our organizations with a lot of disconnected systems and processes and a proliferation of tools. 3 silos that we see commonly in organizations that are here are the traditional project management pieces, and I just have the example of Microsoft Project or Project Online, SharePoint, and some other tools that might fit into that mix. On the right, the application management or software development tools, using things like Visual Studio, which is now been branded as Azure DevOps, and having the Agile tools with called Azure boards within that solution, or using things like Jira or version 1 for more agile type of approaches with tools that are designed for that purpose. And then on the service management side of things, people are using things like ServiceNow or Salesforce Service Cloud or Microsoft Dynamics. And the idea is that there's this unstructured work that's part of the workload or the task load that people get assigned. And here we have a number of different tools, a number of different sources, resources and organizations getting bombarded from multiple places. And so work is being managed by parallel processes. They have multiple places to go to provide update and status, and even some confusion on where their priorities should be and what they should be working on first and what should take precedence over what. So this is a common landscape that we see in the marketplace today, and it does provide some pain points. So if we look at this, just an example of a particular client we were talking to recently is if you look at the different organizations across the top and the different disciplines that are being used, and then the tool sets that are in play. Some are just using things like Outlook or using Excel, but some are using Jira, Azure DevOps, doing their reporting in PowerPoints manually, using SharePoint, and a variety of different things. And the challenge there is to try and pull this together to get a common view of the world, or look at a holistic portfolio for the organization and report up to leadership on how their investments are tracking. So Gartner back in 2015 really coined the term bimodal, and we're using the term hybrid today, but it really is talking about 2 modes, where mode 1 is really this PPM traditional approach, which is a more linear approach, more traditional approach to governance and execution. It is, analogy is a more of a marathon runner, using longer cycle times, phases, gates, those types of things, and using approaches like waterfall. Mode 2 is the more agile approach, which is more nonlinear, involving iterative approaches and really focusing on agility and speed and responding to change and managing uncertainty. And the analogy there is more of a sprinter. We have shorter cycle times, oftentimes 2-week sprints, and using approaches like Agile Scrum, Lean, Kanban, et cetera, to do those types of things. And as I talked about before, in that hybrid type of world, is that there is a place for both of these things in most organizations. And the bimodal approach is the practice of managing 2 separate yet coherent modes of delivery, one focused on stability and the other on agility. So some of the pain points, well, from a traditional PPM and PMO approach, sometimes Agile can be a black hole because of the proliferation of tools that are driven at the team level. They might not even know what tools have been selected or what's being used. They might not have good dynamic visibility into the business deliverables and the investment tracking they need to report up to leadership. So to provide a holistic portfolio of everything that's going on within the organization sometimes requires a lot of manual mashup of data and aggregation of data into a form and format that can be presented. Usually an inefficient use of time that could be used on maybe more high value types of efforts. Also things like applying CapEx and OpEx for the financial aspect of that. And sometimes that's hard to get when you don't have visibility into what's being worked on and by whom within the Agile world. And to the Agile world, the PPM and traditional governance model and the PMO sometimes is considered adding no value or maybe even slowing them down. How can they get the benefits of why they went Agile in the first place if they have the overhead as they perceive it of using traditional PPM methods? You know, why do they have to track CapEx and OpEx? Why can't finance do that? But the main thing is it usually drives a lot of duplicate data entry and time entry by the teams in the Agile because they still have to report up through the organization even though they're choosing to execute in an Agile fashion. So these are just some of the pain points that we see. So the key here is how do we find the right balance? How do we get enough governance to provide the right visibility, insight, alignment, and control, and get that on a more automated basis rather than a more manual basis, but yet have enough agility so that we're responding to the marketplace and we're being relevant as a company with the right innovation, time to market, and responsiveness to the demands of our customers. So in that realm, today's PMO and PPM tools must have different things, because the demands and the expectations of the modern PPM and PMOs have evolved and expanded. If you look at the blocks on the right-hand side, the lighter colored ones is what the things that we traditionally wanted from our PPM solutions and our PMOs. But the darker ones are part of that evolution. More agility has been required. The traditional waterfall phased gate methodologies aren't enough in all aspects any longer. We have to look at total work management, all the things that are on people's plate, both structured and unstructured work, waterfall and agile types of efforts. We have to have better integration so that we can see these things and have a more dynamic access to that and be able to report and keep our finger on the pulse better. And as we have more complex and robust tools that are being developed, we have an app mentality now, especially around among millennials, that says even though it's a complex algorithm on the back end of this thing, the idea is that it should be simple in its use and it should be easy to adopt. It should be something that we want to use. And overall automation, we've got to get the inefficiencies of having manual processes out so that we can be quick and be nimble and be responsive to the marketplace. So what we're seeing today, and this is just one example of a common hybrid use case, where we have a myriad of work management tools, and three of the most popular ones that we see out there are Microsoft Project or Project Online on the lower left. That's used for more traditional waterfall type projects. Azure DevOps in the Microsoft world for software organizations that are using more agile or iterative approaches in Microsoft environments. Azure DevOps is as I mentioned, is the new branding for Visual Studio or Visual Studio Team Services. And another popular one that's out there is Jira. Very similar use case to what's Azure DevOps and Azure boards within Azure DevOps is the same approach for using it for more agile approaches to development. But the bottom line is these are three inputs and maybe many inputs that have to feed up above to a unified portfolio so that we can actually see and get our finger on the pulse of where we're at, have a common intake so we get approval and funding for these things, and be able to prioritize, and then be able to have visibility into how they're performing as we go on through. The nice part about this is the things we're going to talk about here today are available through Microsoft's cloud and the Office 365 platform, and the things that we can do to leverage the other components of that, like Power BI, Microsoft Teams, Flow for process, and other things like that. And then Microsoft adds OnePlan to the mix. It takes the things that people have traditionally been doing in a portfolio management solution like Project Online and really extends that capability to provide the modern capabilities that people are looking at today and the native connection to the tools that we see down below here, among others as well. So OnePlan really can be enabled, and it's basically fused into the user experience for Project Online, Azure DevOps, Office 365 and SharePoint in general, and even Microsoft Dynamics 365, which is the business platform for Microsoft in the cloud. And what it really is adding is portfolio planning, tracking, and what-if analysis, some resource capacity planning in a browser, and some financial planning as you go on through. But the things we're going to focus on today is how that portfolio capability can really extend the capabilities and provide this hybrid environment and this Agile PPM that we're discussing. So in the use cases we're going to see here shortly in a demonstration, project plus OnePlan at the portfolio level is really where everything comes together. This is where you would do all your intake and governance and investment approval, do all the program level and portfolio level management. And that includes things like the financials and the capacity planning that you may want to do across the entire portfolio. But you may have projects that are waterfall in that method and use the native Microsoft project waterfall capabilities that are available and very robust. Or you may use the Azure Boards capability within Azure DevOps, formerly called Visual Studio, to feed into that in a seamless basis. The strength of this is that there is a native connection via OnePlan that allows us to have the work that's being done in either of these tools feed automatically into the portfolio, so those manual mashups of data no longer have to occur. And the same type of use case also is available to us with Jira and other tools, but we're going to focus on these types of use cases today. To be able to just have the updates in the system and have them reflect in the dashboards and the visuals and the other reports that we want to have, and have that come out as a process, so we're not spending time reinventing that wheel every reporting cycle. And this allows it to have not only both waterfall types of reporting, portfolio level reporting, more agile types of reporting and metrics, but hybrid dashboards that contain them all and allow you to personalize that for the needs of your organization. So with those concepts, I'd like to turn this over to Matthew and let him demonstrate how this combination of Project Online and Azure DevOps, accentuated by OnePlan, is something that's available to you today.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jim. All right, so I'm logged in here into Project Online. Project Online is part of your Office 365 set of applications, and it's all together in the same experience. You use the same username and password that you may already use for other applications in here, and it works really well just out of the box with all of these other applications. As an example, if I was to upload a document within Project Online, I can access that document right from within OneDrive. Or if I want to do some reporting on the Project Online information, I can do that right within Power BI, and we'll actually see a little bit of that later on as we go through here today. So what I'm looking at right now is a list of all the different projects that we have going on. Now, some people are going to use different terms for these, especially if they are Agile projects. Maybe one of these projects represents a particular epic or a particular program or whatever it might be, however you want to break this up. But I can come in here and I can see a list of all of the different buckets of work going on and the status of those. So we have some high-level KPIs, overall health, schedule health, work health, et cetera, et cetera. Up front, when we put in new requests for new work into the system, new projects, initiatives, whatever they might be, then we can come in and we can do some very high-level top-down planning. So at this point, I'm not yet going to build a detailed project schedule. I'm not yet going to go and build a full backlog of user stories, task bugs, etc. I'm just trying to understand at a high level, what's it going to take to do this project from a resource perspective. So meaning, how many people or teams is it going to take and for how long, that kind of a thing. And so right through here, I can do that piece of it. I can build out that high level resource plan. I'm not putting any tasks in. I'm just saying, okay, I think I'm going to need Kono for a certain period of time, and you can plan that in hours or in percents or in FTEs, so on and so forth. And if I don't even know yet who's going to be working on my project necessarily, I can just say I need a developer. So you can start with generic resources and then possibly replace those later on if needed. So that allows me to high level understand better, the resource requirements for this project. Then I can come in and I can do more on the financial or the budget side of things. And I can come in and I can build out my high level budget here. The very first thing I can do is hit import, and that's going to pull in all my labor costs automatically for me based off of that resource plan that I just created. And we would set up some blended rates here, and so that when it imports in, it can do all the calculations for you, save you some time and some extra calculations there. And then from there, I can key in any of my other costs, things like materials and supplies, travel and expense, so on and so forth. And it's just a online Excel spreadsheet is the best way to think of this. Later on, you can start to then track other types of costs. Once this project actually starts after it gets approved, like I can update then my forecasts, I can track actuals and possibly even revenue benefits, those types of things if needed. But this is all configurable, so we can set this up to match the cost categories that you want to break up your costs into and the cost types that you want to track, as you're managing these different projects. Right now, I'm looking at this by quarter, but I could also break this down by month or roll it up by year if I only need to see budgets per year. So we can do this at different levels of detail as needed. What this provides is if you have both Agile and waterfall projects, we might have a mixture of projects that are, we're going to eventually go execute on once they're approved. This provides a common way to identify what resources we're going to need and what financials we're going to need before we go and approve these projects to say, yes, go ahead and start doing it. Then when we start actually working on it later, once it's gone through the stage gate and or approval workflow process, that you set up and put in place here to put some governance around this, later on then might be when I start to go build out all of the actual details and then get into execution, more bottoms up side of things. To do that, I can use Microsoft Project and or I can use the online planner that's built right into Project Online, and I can build out more of a traditional waterfall schedule here, and that can be a very simple high-level schedule. You can start from templates, so you have some best practices pre-built. You don't have to build these things from scratch every time. And or they can be more detailed with multiple levels of tasks down to whatever level of detail necessary. On the other end, if you're using a tool like Azure DevOps or Jira or whatever your Agile tool of choice is, we can integrate up with that system and we can set it so that we can pull in the relevant information from over there. Just like I could go into Project Desktop, build out my schedule and publish it in, I can go out to Azure DevOps, build out my backlog of my different features broken down into user stories, tasks, bugs, etc., and let that all roll back in so I still have a view of all of the detailed work that's been planned, and then let that roll all the way back up to the project and into the different reports and dashboards and such that we'll see in a second. So that's more from the project manager and or scrum master or whoever's really managing this project from a resource, financial, and schedule perspective. One thing that we find is even if you're connecting up to an Agile tool and you're managing this project in an Agile way, a lot of times people still end up keeping a separate project schedule or release plan or release timeline, if you want to call it that, separately from the backlog items. The reason being is most people only plan out a sprint or two ahead. So it's really hard to tell exactly when you're going to be finished. You can look at burn down reports and things like that. That's assuming that you have everything already in the backlog. And as you're going through the Agile process, a lot of times you're continually adding things as you get feedback from stakeholders and ideas and so on and so forth. But if you want to then be able to present back to the business and to stakeholders and customers and so on and so forth of when we think we're going to say get the version 1 of this new product out or this new feature or whatever it might be, you can actually use both the backlog tab and the so-called schedule tab to have maybe a high-level release plan of just when we think things are going to get out the door to better communicate that in a simple way. So you can actually have both at the same time if you choose to do so, a hybrid scenario if you want to call it that. So, everything again starts out the same up front. It's until you get to the execution, you decide if you want a waterfall schedule or if you want to use an Agile backlog out of an Agile tool or a little bit of both. Up to you. You have the ability to do all of that. From there, I'll go into my portfolio view here. And what we can see is there are many different work buckets, initiatives, projects, programs, etc., that are going on here in the system. And within that, we can do some analysis and figure out where issues are, and we can use this up front, both for selecting and figuring out what we're going to do and when we're going to do it, starting to build out our roadmap, as well as we can use it later on to see, where the issues are and where we may need to make adjustments to account for both financial resource issues, so on and so forth. So the first thing that you might notice here when I come in is that I have lots of different projects. You'll see some status on these guys, estimated budgets, benefits. We can do more traditional scoring on these from a priority perspective to get a prioritization score based off of drivers, and or we can do more modern, say, prioritization scoring methods like WSJF, weighted shortest job first, which is what SAFE recommends from a scoring perspective. I have them both here right in line, and so what I can do is when I come in and I want to do some prioritization, if I need to kind of reprioritize my portfolio at any time, I can flip into prioritization mode and I can look at all of the metrics in the view here that are of interest to me for when I'm doing prioritization. I may include other things like ROI or NPV or IRR, more financial metrics, whatever I might want to include in this view. And then I can come in and simply just start dragging and dropping things. So I can come here and drag and drop and move these around just to stack, rank, reorder them to get some prioritization around these guys. From there, I can also create some dependencies around them if need be. So I can come in and you'll see here that there are dependencies set up between these different projects. So we're not talking task level dependencies, we're talking project level dependencies. And I can view this by month or by quarter, you know, whatever level of detail I want to view it at, but I can create those dependencies. And some of these projects, notice, are actually Agile projects. And you notice the icon here, this one in particular is being managed in Azure DevOps. Other ones are being managed over in Project Desktop. Some are in Office 365 Planner, you know, so on and so forth for the execution side of these things, but I still have one view with all of them together, including my dependencies and so on and so forth. Adding another layer on top of that, what if I want to know how we're doing from a resource perspective, if we have any issues there, if there's any conflicts? I can come in and I'm going to actually expand this into full screen mode so we have a little more room to work with here. And I can come in and I can turn on the resource planning module below this and kind of overlay that. And so now, okay, here's my roadmap of all my different projects and everything that's going on. And I want to come in and see how we're doing from a resource perspective. Who's working on what, who's over allocated, so on and so forth, and I can make adjustments to that, and you know, so on and such. The same thing then I can do on the cost side of things. I can come in and I can look at my total budget and how all of these are and what's going on here, and see that all roll up and see where I have hot spots and then make adjustments and so on and so forth. At the same time, I can flip to other views. So there's different ways I can look at this. So for example, if I want to see a Kanban board of all of my different projects, initiatives, etc., I can come in and I can see all those laid out on a Kanban board, and I can organize this many different ways. Right now it's organized by business units. I could change that by state, you know, not started, in progress, completed, etc. I can color these tiles with on the board, or sticky notes if you want to call them that, you know, so I can see some meaningful things here. In this case, it's by priority, or could be by health, or whatever you might want. And I can also even total things up on the Kanban board, like say budget or points or hours or whatever it might be that you want to see those totals across the different categories that we're looking at here. And it's all drag and drop, so I can simply update things just by dragging and drop and moving them around depending on how I set up my view here. As we're, you know, building out our portfolio and we're working on projects and we're creating those dependencies between different ones and such, then I might want to come into my roadmap view here and kind of see very clearly where things are laid out, when they're going to happen, what's the progress on them so far, dependencies between these. In this case, I have it grouped up here by business units so that we can see all of the different units here, accounting, human resources, IT, you know, et cetera, and kind of organizing the different projects into those. We can come in, then we can color these, like for example, maybe I want to color this by priority, for example, and see how that all works. And then you can utilize this to better communicate your roadmap of what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. This could be, say, across the whole IT organization and or more than that, like you see here if you're more of a, say, EPMO. And what this is really good for is it's not just, again, your waterfall projects or your Agile projects, it's both of them all together automatically without you having to try to manually mush things together in PowerPoints, Excel files, you know, whatever it might be, and really show that. From there, I can report on this, and we'll see some reports in just a second. There's also a print option in here if you just wanted to print this out and send it over to someone or share it or whatever it might be. So as you're working on all of these projects, whether they're Agile, waterfall, or hybrid, we need to give dashboards and reports and visibility into what's going on to leadership, to management, to stakeholders, et cetera. And so what I'm now looking at here is I'm in Power BI, another application part of the Office 365 stack, Microsoft's modern cloud reporting tool. And I'm looking at a dashboard here that we call our Agile PPM portfolio dashboard. And imagine I'm someone like, say, a manager who needs to look across all these different projects, waterfall, Agile, all of the above, and get an idea of what's going on. This is a great dashboard pre-built out of the box that you can start from to start seeing that information, getting visibility into what's going on. On the left-hand side, you can see metrics like portfolio cost, risk, ROI, more traditional waterfall types of metrics. But the cool part is this cost, for example, is not actually just my waterfall projects. It's the total cost of my entire portfolio, both waterfall, agile projects, and not. Since we were using a common way to track costs around all of these, it's easy just to roll that all together and start getting more visibility into costs. If I scroll down here, we can do more traditional bubble charts, risk versus ROI, benefits versus cost, these types of things. We can get into project status, and we can even get into, say, resource availability across all of this different work that's going on, including operational work, by the way, help desk types of things, keep the lights on, that such, if you're loading that into the system as well. On the right side, though, we can see more traditional agile metrics like sprint burnups or burndowns, bug trends over time, cumulative flow diagrams of user stories, velocity charts, whatever it might be that you want to track. We can get all of those metrics as well and have it all together in one place. So if I'm a manager, I don't have to go to Project Online to see, say, the waterfall reports and go over to Azure DevOps to see the agile reports. I can come to Power BI and get every piece of information I need from these different systems in a meaningful way, all here together in one place. From there, if I want more information, I can click on any one of these. So for example, I could click on the project portfolio status report here. That will drill me into the full report, kind of out of that just high-level dashboard. And now I can come in and I can get more details. Okay, I can see all my projects, the status of those projects, how far along are we on those projects? 4 of them are off track, 6 have overdue issues, 22 are behind schedule, et cetera, et cetera. I could filter this down if I went and just look at my agile projects or just look at my waterfall projects, just using different filters in here, or just look at specific portfolios, programs, whatever it might be. And then using the tabs across the bottom, I can drill into all the different types of data that we may be tracking and may be interested in around these projects. So I can look at more of a timeline roadmap type view of things. I can come in and see, when everything is all laid out here. Just the same as I could look at it from more of a financial perspective and come in and look at the costs and view, budgets versus actuals and what's remaining and benefits and ROIs and so on and so forth. And you can also do these things over time, so we can show time phase costs or time phase resources over time, how we're burning. And all the way down into detailed issues, risks, change requests, whatever it might be. There's, say a full-on risk matrix in here that you can utilize if you're using these types of capabilities within the system to view into all the details that could happen. So with that, you can see how we can start up front doing some high-level, top-down planning from resource financials. We can go through an approval workflow process and use that portfolio analysis module I showed you to do prioritization and figure out if and when we can do things within our budgets and our resources. And then we can go and execute on the tool of choice, whatever makes sense for that particular project. Is it an agile tool? Is it a waterfall tool? Maybe even both in a hybrid scenario, and report off of all this naturally without requiring anyone to double enter any information or do anything that's unnatural that they're not already doing today. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Jim for just a couple more closing slides, and then we'll let you guys go for the day. Here you go, Jim.
Thank you, Matthew. Let me change the presenter back to me. And let me know when you can see my slide.
I can see it.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you for the great demonstration. It really illustrated how we can bring projects from a variety of different data sources. The examples we showed there were Azure DevOps project and Office 365 Planner, and be able to bring those all into a common portfolio. Now, what's the value of doing all this? The value of a more hybrid Agile PPM type of approach is to get this aggregate look. You don't have to rip and replace and get users to adopt the same tool set. It allows and keeps users working in the primary tools and solutions that they need or prefer to execute the work that they need, but still have it feed into a common holistic portfolio. It also allows users to work in tools appropriate for their role or maturity or type of work. We talked about software development work that might be being done in Azure DevOps, but the Office 365 Planner that he alluded to might be for folks that have very simple projects that don't need the robustness of a critical path scheduler or maybe a full iterative-based agile type of approach. So the idea is it allows for the different types of users and the needs of those different users. It also accommodates a variety of methodologies and tools that support those methodologies. Hence, it improves adoption by minimizing unnecessary complexity and eliminating that duplication of effort I talked in as far as that disconnect we talked about earlier on in the slides in the earlier part of the webinar. So better user experience is shown to drive better participation and compliance, meaning the less barriers you put up and the less cumbersome duplication of effort or manual effort you put into the process, the more likely it is people are going to participate and give you good information and have you be able to get that on a more real-time basis. By integrating all work, we can look at all resources and financials and everything into a single view that aggregates up to leadership so they can actually keep their finger on the pulse of how their investments are tracking. And as teams continue to be agile, leadership gets the visibility into the metrics they require. If we want to translate that into financials or KPIs, they're probably not interested at their level at things like velocity charts and burn ups and burn downs. So the idea is to translate that into a language that leadership wants to see is very powerful to be able to do that as a normal course of business as a natural output. So overall, this just facilitates better collaboration by all parties across all areas of the business, which should make us more effective. And as the picture says, getting us all rowing in the same direction. So about Wickersoft, we are a full service firm. We were founded as a joint venture with Microsoft, by Microsoft in 2002. We're not only a technology partner, but we're also a business partner. They're a part owner of our company. And we provide all the advisory consulting services on these transformations, strategic planning, and even managing change within organizations. We provide all the solutions expertise to enable solutions like you saw here today for people and provide all the capabilities that you see. And on an operational side, we provide consulting, staffing. We can help fill gaps that you have in your staffing and provide the training and support you need to be successful. We even administer some of these systems as a managed service and managed delivery for companies as well. We're a multi-gold certified company and we have a global footprint, and so we can help you if you're a far-flung company that has a global presence. We also support all the business solutions in the platforms. We talked about Project Online and OnePlan today, and that is one dimension, but we do the same types of things in Office 365 and SharePoint, in Dynamics and others. And the idea here is anything that's going on in the Microsoft cloud, we can support and use these other non-Microsoft tools and connect those into the mix as well. And the connector technology from OnePlan, this OneConnect that's behind the scenes, just to give an idea of the types of tools, different agile tools that you see here like Jira, Visual Studio version 1, financial systems like SAP, Oracle, Dynamics, and others. Other work management tools, as I said, unstructured type of service management tools like ServiceNow, CRM tools that might be feeders into these projects and things like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics CRM. The idea there's use cases beyond the ones that we talked here today. So be aware that if you want to connect other line of business tools or applications into this mix to have a holistic view or a more seamless automation between them, Wickersoft has solutions for many of them. As a next step, if you were interested in some of the things you saw today, depending on where you're at in the journey, we can offer you a free mini assessment and give you an idea of a roadmap of what it would take to get you from the state you're in today to take advantage of some of the things you saw here today in this webinar. We'll also, if you're about to make a decision and you want to take some serious look at the solution, we can get you a chaperone trial of both Project Online and OnePlan into the mix and see if this is something that might be a good fit for you. Or if you're not that far down the road and you've seen the generalized stuff that we demonstrated today in this short webinar, we could actually schedule a personalized one-on-one demonstration for you and your organization that addresses any specific requirements or needs that you have. To reach out to us, you can, probably the best way is to go to contact us at wickersoft.com. You'll get a copy of these slides. If you want to reach out to Matthew or I directly, our emails are on there as well. We also have some good resources on our websites. Our main one is wickersoft.com. We also have some Project Online specific content at project-online.com and OnePlan specific information on project-online.com/OnePlan. So in addition to that, we have, just like this one will be here shortly, we have a whole library of on-demand pre-recorded webinars that we've done in the past on similar topics and other ones. So if you go to wickersoft.com/webinars, you'll get those, plus a list of our upcoming webinars that you may want to register for. So with that, I'd like to thank you all again for spending some time with us today. And we love sharing the information of what's available out there today and make people in their organizations more effective. And would love to engage with you and see how we can help your organizations as well. Have a great day.